Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Kohei Noda, who is the Country Director for AB InBev here in Japan. It's a very strange name, isn't it? AB. What is this? Explain the name a little bit for people who may not be familiar with it.
Yeah, no, we've gone through a variety of mergers and acquisitions. So it's Anheuser-Busch InBev. That's shortened into AB InBev.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so you're in the you're a very important industry, and you've got a very big job in Japan. How is it that give us a bit of the background in your career? Where did you start, and how did you get to be the country director for AB InBev in Japan?
Sure. Just in terms of my background, maybe to start, I'm Japanese. I've spent around half my life in Japan, and then the other half living in some other countries. Growing up, I lived in Singapore and Australia. Came back to Japan. Wanted to see the world again. So as part of high school, I went to Canada. And then after that, went to the States to study for university. And then after that, I came back to Japan.
Well, you did well. I believe you got into Princeton,
I did.
which is an extremely Ivy League elite school. So you did well to go through the educational system there in English. And then, it's very competitive to get into these schools, so well done. And then what happens after Princeton?
So I joined Bain Company to work in management consulting.
Why are you Bain Company? I mean, this is, you were studying, I think, in the medical area, was it? The medical services area or something at uni? I seem to see something about that, and completely different branch, you're a different area.
Yeah, I did global health as a kind of a minor.
That's right.
And then my major was in ecology and evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
So overall, I had a passion for sustainability, for science overall as well. So I did a lot of work during my days in university on in the public sector, volunteering, promoting sustainability and so on. But also saw the power of businesses, how they're able to transform industries, move consumers, drive sustainable practices and so on, which I was quite inspired by, and I wanted to learn more. And consulting for me seems like a great way to be able to get the knowledge and the capabilities in business.
How long were you at Bain?
I was there for 4.5 years.
Right, but you didn't stick with the consulting side of things?
I did not.
So because it was incredibly competitive, or just got too intense, or spending hours doing macros on spreadsheets was driving everyone crazy, or?
Of course, I had some of that in Excel work and PowerPoint and so on. I really loved my work in consulting. I enjoyed it. It gave me an opportunity to look at various industries, from healthcare to consumer goods to private equity and finance, which was quite exciting. But I had a passion to try to become a leader in the future. When I thought about that, I thought I should, and I would like to build leadership skills, basically to lead my own organization rather than just work through clients.
Because I guess, the old classic with management consultants is they come in, they borrow your watch, and they tell you the time, right? Because having been on the receiving end of consultants when I was at Shinsei Bank, they come in, they study everything, they analyze everything, they come up with some solutions, but all of that information is coming from us who weren't there. So, I always thought to myself, wow, you've got to have a certain intellect for this to be able to walk into an organization you don't know, ask a bunch of questions, understand the business very quickly, and then work out something that nobody working here has worked out yet. Pretty demanding job, I thought at the time. So I can imagine that Bain, with their brand, is an incredible brand. That must be a lot of pressure too, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun though, because you get to solve critical issues for businesses that also businesses don't have enough time or resources to spend the needed attention.
Also, I think in businesses we tend to be in our little zones. You're a specialist in this area of the business. Probably only the CEO and the upper echelon give a chance to look across all the business. And they're pretty busy people, so you need someone to come in and give you a bit of an angle on things, I guess, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, so you think, okay, well, Bain, I'd like to run my business. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So after my time at Bain, I by chance heard from a friend that Anheuser-Busch InBev, AB InBev, was coming to Japan. In the past, AB InBev used to sell products through a distribution partnership. So we had various companies like Molson Coors, Kirin, Asahi, who were handling our brands like Corona, Budweiser, Hoegaarden.
About what year is this that they came in?
This was in 2015.
So relatively recently.
Yes, almost 10 years now.
Because I remember we went through a stage there, I'm going to say late 90s, early 2000s, where a lot of luxury brands either bought back or rescinded their existing distribution relationships to actually have control over the brand in Japan, have their own staff and their own stores or store in stores, but they controlled it rather than through a distributor. And that was quite a big change, and I think that made a big difference for a lot of control. But 2015, that's quite recent, so yeah.
It is. Yep. Yeah, so I heard about that. In the beginning, I wasn't necessarily thinking about going into the beer business, but it's not often that a huge global consumer goods company is really trying to start to build a stronger presence in a market like Japan. And I met the founder, who's Toon van der Veer, who was my first line manager in Japan, setting up the business. And I felt a lot of passion, a lot of excitement for the opportunity to really transform the beer industry in Japan.
So they started in 2015 from scratch, like they had to go and recruit people from zero, or were you inheriting people from the previous?
No, it was really from zero.
Zero,
and I was also
exciting.
Yeah.
And you start from zero and build up. You choose the people, you choose everything. That's where you're usually doing the work of 10 people.
Yeah.
In those sorts of situations, you're doing the work of 10 people for quite a while. It must have been hard.
No, it was a lot of fun. So I was one of the first 7 employees to join the company.
Okay.
And it was really building everything from scratch, which was a lot of excitement.
Yeah. And at what point within that, I mean, I don't know, how many people are you up to now?
We have around 70 people.
70 people, right? So it's quite big. So at some point in that, you must have created or been given responsibility for a team of people as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming Bain, well, I'm guessing you're probably more of an analyst rather than a leader. You're probably reporting to a partner or you're part of a team. So you're not really running a team. So this is probably your first real leadership experience, I guess, in AB InBev, right?
Yes, that's right.
So how big was the first team you had?
It was first 3. I had 3 reports. In the beginning, I was by myself.
Yeah.
And so I was a brand manager, and then from there, I built the trade marketing team. So that was my first leadership experience.
Yeah, and I'm guessing usually in these situations, the company doesn't give you any training on leadership either. Somehow you got to work it out yourself. I presume that's the case. Particularly if you're in Japan, it's a brand new operation. You've got 3 people that take care of it. They probably think, oh, you'll work it out. You'll be fine. So it is a bit of an experimentation process, isn't it?
It is.
And so you start with 3 people, and then you start getting bigger jobs, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point did you start getting a reasonably large number of people to look after?
Yeah, so after taking the head of trade marketing role, also spent 2 years in China. So in our ABI China business, leading trade marketing for the premium brands, which were Corona, Hoegaarden.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive. Why are they sending the Canadian educated or Canada educated, American educated, Japanese guy to China?
I think as a company, we like to bet on people, develop people by giving them new opportunities and new challenges. So that was one element. And then the other element was that the Zone CEO, president back then, had visited Japan. He saw the quality of the execution that I was doing together with the team, and was really quite impressed by the sophistication that we have in the country. So he wanted to bring that sophistication also to China, because in order to build premium brands, you need attention to detail, and sophistication that wasn't there at the time.
It's the Wild West
Yeah.
of China, basically, for a lot of companies, isn't it?
Mhm.
And that must be interesting for you because, you know, Japan is a country of precision, accountability, loyalty, responsibility. And in my experience, China is a country of, oh, there's more money over there. Buy, gone. And, let's make it happen. We'll work it out later, So it's almost the entire opposite of Japan in many ways. So it must be very challenging leading in China with quite a different cultural perspective on, and again, you're talking about building a brand, right? So that must have been hard.
Yeah, it was definitely a new challenge and a great learning experience for me.
The good thing about China is the speed, I guess, because, they execute very quickly.
Yes.
They're not worried about perfection. We'll work it out later. Whereas Japan is like get all the ducks in a row first and perfectly aligned and measure the distances and the heights, and then we're ready to go, we'll go. So quite the opposite in many ways.
Yeah, I love that because, being at the scale we were back then in Japan, we were fast, right? But to see a larger business unit being able to do the same thing with speed in China was really quite impressive.
And so when you came back, what was your next job in Japan when you came back?
I came back as a head of ZX Ventures, which was the kind of the growth arm of the company. So it was focusing on the craft and specialties portfolio, which were smaller inside, but were growing, and also managing the e-commerce channel as well.
How many people are working for you then?
That actually, I was working together with other functions, and I was only with two
So
direct
pretty
reports.
small teams.
Yes.
And at what point did you get a big team of people?
So that was when in the next position that I took, which was the commercial director, and that was managing the full sales team and also the trade marketing team. So around 40 people or so.
So you're going from 3 to 40. I don't know about China. Maybe China was a big team.
Direct report, not so.
Not so many. So that's quite a jump, isn't it? And then you go from that at some point to running the whole 70. Right? Again, these are big jumps in terms of leadership. So what did you find challenging about going from having, 3 people, 2 people? It's like a family, it's easier in one way, right? But then you start getting 40 people, 70 people, you got to operate through others. It's more challenging in many ways. What did you find was challenging about that?
I think the biggest change was having more layers in the organization. I think managing direct reports is one thing, and then trying to manage an organization with another layer on top, I think, is another.
So theoretically, you've got, 40 people. You've probably got, I don't know, 5, 6 direct reports, I'm guessing, something like that usually, maybe 7, whatever like that. So you're dealing with 6, 7 people. However, what about the people below and how to get them aligned and have them informed and make sure that it's all what you think is happening at the top is actually happening? How did you approach that to make sure that what you thought was actually going on, be it the 40 or the 70 now, is actually happening?
I think there's no easy way, I would say, other than, talking to the people.
I thought you just sent them an email. This is what I want, done, right?
So I think it needs to be a two-way communication. We're, of course, careful to have a proper cascade of information on strategy, company direction, holding share and tells and town halls and so on, but also having opportunities to connect outside of that with the team. And those could be, one-on-ones with non-direct reports. I'm also, I always have a routine to visit the field sales teams in Tokyo and other regions as well, to visit stores together, ask them about the opportunities that see, the pain points and challenges that they face, as well as, talk in general about company culture and so on, to make sure that we have the connection and a common understanding of what we're trying to do as a company.
And so, in your experience so far with your main leadership experience has been with AB InBev, and so if you think about looking back and even now, What things did you find worked well to get people engaged to follow you?
We talk a lot about engagement, and we're always, after we have an engagement survey, we come up with the action plans. Right now, the structure or the framework we use is to have 3 pillars. One is on passion, one is on connection, and one is on commitment. And these are trying to address different elements of engagement for our company. Passion is about, passion for the company, passion and alignment with our strategy and dream. It's about having passion for our brands. So these we try to manage through the formal and informal communications, involving the team in strategic planning, making sure they're on board, they know what's happening, and they get excited about all the things that we're doing with the brands that we have. Connection is about creating a sense of belonging. So it's about bringing people together. There's a real need for making sure that there's cross-functional collaboration and communication in a growing organization. So we try to do that in different settings, different dinners, lunches. We're privileged as a beer company to be able to bring people for events as well. So last year, we got everyone together in the Morito Beach area to do a beach cleanup, play, games together, and kind of celebrate the results that we had in the summer. So these are the things that we do to build connection. And then commitment is about empowering the team to deliver results within their jobs. So this is solving, pain points or challenges that see in individual functions, as well as in cross-functional collaboration. So those are the kind of the actions that we try to take.
The surveys you're doing, are these engagement surveys?
Yes.
Are these annual or?
Yes, they're annual surveys, but we have additional dip as well in
global
between,
as well?
globally led.
So in my experience in Japan with engagement surveys, usually you're in the room, all the heads are there, and then up come the global results, and APAC at the bottom, and the bottom of APAC, Japan, and then you get a whole lot of pain from headquarters about what are you doing in Japan? The Japanese team are not engaged. Look at these results. I don't know. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, and I think, not limited to engagement surveys, but net promoter scores and all the surveys you do in Japan, the average score is low.
It's for the consumer, you mean?
Yes, for the Japanese consumer and employees. But that's not to say that the scores cannot improve. So that's what we focus on, to try to make sure that we continue to have improvement.
I often think the net promoter score question is usually, would you recommend AB InBev's product to your family and friends, that type of thing, right? Japanese never seem to go for that question very easily. They're always thinking, I don't want to take any accountability for that. I don't want to take any responsibility for that. Would you introduce someone to the company to work here? Like, absolutely no way I'm doing that. If I do that and then my friend or my relative hates it, I got a problem at home with the family. If the company hates them, I got a problem at work. No, leave it. I get a low score. Mm-hmm. So I always think that's not a relevant question for Japan, because when I ask people, is they get these low engagement scores, I say, well, do you think that people are loyal? Yeah, they're loyal. Do they work hard? Yeah, they work hard. If they're loyal, they work hard. Which part of this means they're not engaged? But the score says they're not engaged, because that's how they're scoring it, right? So it's always a pain. I must say those surveys are always a pain. And I went through plenty of that too, with headquarters was in Hong Kong. It was painful sitting there. But anyway. So, but you talked about some things you do to get people engaged. What about, say, beyond those things that you mentioned? I mean, you've got your passion, you connect, your commitment is a sort of driving force. But other things you did apart from the town halls or the lots of beer in the summer after a big summer or something, what other else things that try and work well?
I think for me, what I mentioned, I think, is the overall framework. So the actions we've been taking fall within that. Passion and connection for me are, mid to long-term things that you need to build anyway. I've seen that the actions around commitment are the ones that are high impact for the team, and also quick wins at times.
What?
Uh, just as an example, if sales and the operations team have some challenges in collaboration, a lot of the times it comes from the lack of communication on things like, import status of a product, for example, or if we have a certain issue with our products, the sales wants to make sure that they're equipped to be able to explain that to the customer. A lot of the times, being a growing company, we didn't have the right processes in place to be able to do that with the right visibility and aligned timelines and service levels. But once we understand that pain point, we get the two functions together and come up with an action plan. It really reduces the stress and the tension that the team has, and allows the team to really focus on delivering results, which the team wants to do. So I found that empowering teams in that way really helps to drive commitment and in turn the engagement.
Wouldn't be unusual for a sales team to get out ahead on the skis over, the supply chain or the operational logistics side of things, because they're keen to sell stuff right and go for it. So it's very common, isn't it, with sales teams? And I think, as you mentioned, the communication piece is always the missing piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you can fix that, it goes a long way to solving the problem. In terms of, you've been raised in a number of countries. You've been educated in Canada and America. You've worked in China. You're Japanese. You've got a really amazing portfolio of experiences in your life and viewpoints and perspectives. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you have a lot of ideas, and based on you getting information from headquarters, based on your previous experience, your Bain experience about through analysis, etc. So as leaders often, we have a lot of ideas. And sometimes we forget to get the ideas from our people, because we've got plenty of ideas. We've got no shortage of ideas. I think we could do lots of stuff. But we forget that the people in the front line have probably, as we get higher, we get further away from that front line. They're closer to it, closer to the client. They may have ideas. We're not tapping into them. What things have you found was worked well for you to enable you to tap into the ideas of the people in your team and not just rely on your own ideas?
I think, you were saying it's hard to get people to speak up about engagement in Japan. I think it's similar with innovation and getting new ideas from the team. So it's important to have some structures in place in order to do that. Some of the things that we're doing, one example is as part of our strategic planning cycle, we have a certain section of the day of the workshop dedicated to having teams bring their own ideas. So we call it a Shark Tank, similar to what's done on the TV show. And the team is really free to bring any topic relevant to the business that they want to see implemented and could possibly drive results. So it's a way to encourage the team to come up with ideas, and some of those have actually been implemented after the presentations, which is builds the understanding that the company is really looking for ideas, and it needs to come from the people who are the closest to the pain points that customers or consumers have.
What about the ideas that aren't taken up? Because you've probably had this experience, many of us have, in the leadership team, off-site strategic planning meeting, whatever it might be. You paper the walls in big sheets with ideas written on them. It's just the whole thing, floor to ceiling. Unbelievable. All these great ideas come out, and then nothing. Nothing. You never see any of the ideas implemented. You wonder, what the hell did I waste my time and effort coming up with those ideas for? And there's no explanation either of why that nothing ever happened. So how do you balance that out? Because it is demotivating if you've been through that once and you realize, well, we sat in that room, we worked it hard, came up with some really interesting ideas, and nothing was picked up. So what's the point? Second time around, I'm not that keen. So to keep people motivated, keep them engaged in that ideation process, how do you deal with the ideas that aren't taken up?
That's a great question. I think for us, we haven't had situations when we had this open Shark Tank where we don't have any idea that we don't want to take, to be honest.
So they're all getting...
So I think part of it is making sure that we have a clear brief as well as the team understanding our strategic direction, which we do try to, pay a lot of attention to do. And then we also provide feedback for the ideas that are not taken, with the reasons, right?
This is on the spot.
No, this is afterwards.
This comes later.
We'll have a discussion as a management team and see, which ideas should be implemented now. Sometimes ideas, are not accepted now, but we see potential for it in the longer term. So I think it's making sure to provide that feedback when it's not an immediate implementation.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it could be financial at this stage of the cycle. We don't have the allocation of funds for that idea, but it's a good idea. That might be in a future cycle, or there may be some supply chain issues that prevent that from happening today, but we fix that up. That's, if you hear that, well, that makes sense. That's logical, and I see that. Well, that's good. They haven't dismissed my idea. Or even if you dismiss the idea, if there's a good rationale for dismissing it, that's acceptable too. But that sort of hearing nothing, it just disappears. That's the worst. That's actually the worst. But what about trust? I mean, trust is important everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
However, I always feel in Japan, somehow trust is more important in Japan than many other societies. I think part of it is there's a logical element in a lot of societies, like coming from Australia, very logical, not so emotional. But Japan always has that emotional element around relationships and, obligation and giving something back in return to balance out the obligation. And it's very complex in the society. So trust, I think, has got more ramifications here. I'm not saying that Western society is necessarily transactional, but it has got a fairly big transactional element to it. But not Japan. It's not transactional. It's relationships, time. So what have you found works well with trust?
I think from my experience, again, there's no silver bullet there other than making sure you have consistency and honesty and openness, I think, in working with people. I think when...
So, no leader, I think, is going to say, I'm dishonest. Nobody's going to say that. But how do people know you're honest? We say, these are buzzwords, consistency, honesty, openness, Really? How do people know you're consistent? How do they know you're honest? How do they know you're open? How do they feel that? If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors.
Communicating through different channels in a consistent way, making the opportunity to make the connections outside of these formal settings as well. So these would be, I can say in a strategic meeting or a workshop, one thing, but if I'm acting in a different way in another setting, of course, people start to see those discrepancies. But it's making sure that these messages are delivered through myself, through the managers, through the other management teams in a
How do
consistent way.
you know if the direct reports are also managing the same degree of consistency in their verticals? How do you keep track of that?
I think, I mean, you can never fully keep track of that. So of course you need to trust your team members to be able to do that. But it's a work in progress, right? If someone's new to the organization, it takes time for them to really understand the culture, the direction, and the priorities of the company. So there, of course, I'm there to support. But it's also not fully relying on just communication cascades through managers, but having the connections yourself to individual team members as well, I believe, where you also start to maybe hear something different, and then you need to step in and make sure that there's consistency.
Well, how about the honesty part? Just to say, no one says they're dishonest. I'm a dishonest leader. No one ever says that. I'm an honest leader. But how do people actually at the bottom know that you're an honest leader? How can they tell that?
For me, it's about, I mean, I'm not sure if this will enforce the honesty part, but I'm clear about things that I can share and I cannot share, things that I know and I don't know. And I think the team appreciate at least that I entertain those questions and say, look, that's something that I can talk about, or look, that's something that we have a plan for, or look, this is something that we don't know yet, but we need to act on it, or say it's not a priority, so we will not act on this. So giving a clear point of view on what are priorities, what are things that we can talk about, what we have answers to, what are the gaps in the organization. I think these are real conversations that we need to have with the team, so that you're not just painting a rosy picture of everything and you know everything as well.
Often it comes down to short-term, long-term gain as well, doesn't it? Like, for example, in the training business, naturally the salespeople have targets. They want to get revenue. It may come up that there's a client need, and there might be two possibilities. We make more money on one than the other. But if your belief is in the customer, you won't worry about which one you make the most money from. You'll go for the one which suits the client need best. And this is where, when as a leader, when people are promoting the one where there's going to be more money involved, but doesn't really match the needs as well as the less money, and you go for that one, they see when he talks about customer need being the priority, he's actually backing it up with dollars by not choosing this other route, by going maybe a lesser revenue, but a better outcome from the client. And I think those sorts of decisions are where the rubber meets the road, with honesty, I think, myself, and it comes up because people have got pressures to produce revenues. Let's go for the way the money is. No, if I'm going to go for this one, So yeah, with those opportunities come up, I think it's always important to, as you say, have that consistent. If I say the customer comes first, then the customer comes first. Not only on Wednesdays and Fridays, it's every day of the week. So we have to be conscious of that, don't we?
Yep.
And you talked before a little bit about culture. For you, what have you found works well to build a culture? Because you've got AB InBev global culture. We're in Japan, so there's Japanese culture. And then there's Kohei culture. How you want the organization to be as a reflection of your leadership. So what have you found works well to build a culture in an organization?
I mean, the culture I want to build, I think, is quite consistent with the culture we want to build globally. Though, of course, the way it manifests in Japan and the way it, matches the cultural expectations might be slightly different. For me, as with any organization, probably, the first is really trying to find the right people, right? And that can take some patience in Japan, especially with maybe a sales organization where you're not necessarily hiring English-speaking team members in the beginning. You really need to take time to make sure that they want to learn about the culture. They want to adapt to the culture that we have as a company. So I think this, selection at the point of entry is key, of course. And then it's about how we develop that talent after we hire them.
What about if you make a poor choice or it's revealed? actually is not a cultural fit? What do you do then?
We're quite open about the importance of culture fit in terms of progressing in our company. Um, we also have, as part of our annual people cycle, when we evaluate people, opportunities to get feedback on kind of cultural alignment. We call these leadership capability models. So they're clear leadership qualities that we look for in people. And if we find that some people have strengths in some areas, but large gaps in others, where we need to give that feedback. And that's just as important, if not more, than the performance aspect of things. So we're careful to make sure that people know that that's very important and core to the company. So we're not just looking at KPIs and so on that are quantitative.
And so what else around culture have you found works well?
Of course, we have opportunities to cascade what our culture is. So recently, I've had a chance to we have what is called the 10 principles at our company, which really the 10 principles.
10 principles. Okay.
Which are really the cultural pillars of the company. And it's about how we dream, how we treat and develop people. It's about our culture as a company. So, I've had the chance to cascade that to the team, and then also have a discussion with them on, which are the parts where we feel like we're doing well and consistent with the culture, where areas where we're not doing well or where we can further improve to align with the culture. So, that's one example.
It's on that, Richard Branson was quite famous for saying the employees come first. But for other companies, the client comes first or the buyer comes first. How about for you? Is it the employee comes first and then the client or the buyer, the consumer, or is the consumer come first? Where do you sort of see yourself in that split?
I don't see many situations where those things go in conflict, right? Mm-hmm. Because when the consumer wins, we win. When the customer wins, we win. Mm-hmm. So I think it's being able to separate those things out.
I mean, Richard Branson's idea is quite straightforward away. He says, look, if we treat our people well, they'll treat the customer well.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense, And then others say, well, we make the customer the focus. We all align around that to get the coordination and get the communication, get everything working together. They're probably both right. I guess it just depends on I don't think you can have a customer focus and have a bad approach to your team and expect things are going to work out well. Although I'm told that Jeff Bezos, in principle, wants people who work for Amazon to wake up scared, work scared, and go to bed scared every day. That to me seems like really that's what you want for people. Anyway, maybe I'm short.
No, but I think
something in there in terms of maybe it's more complex than that. But that to me seems like a ridiculous idea. Why would I want, as a leader? Why would I want to do that? I want people to feel good about what they're doing and comfortable and secure and safe and energized to do more. So I mean, there's different angles on this. Got a correct answer here. But anyway, coming back to any other things that you found work well in terms of culture.
In addition to kind of enforcing the top-down message on the importance of culture to the company and making sure that people understand what these cultural pillars are, it's about
the difference that you said before. The company is a result of some pretty big mergers, and that's always tricky because you've got, Anheuser-Busch culture, InBev culture, and suddenly it becomes a one-company culture. Not that easy. I guess in Japan, because you started in 2015, it was already mergers already done. So, it's fixed. But often in Japan, where there's mergers of companies, every single person knows who's who. Oh, they came from the red team, or they came from the blue team. Usually the logos of the previous company. And the promotions are sort of worked out in some sort of coordination, to keep everything sort of in harmony. But, when you've had the merger of big organizations, how do you get a single culture? Although I suppose Japan, you probably didn't have that problem.
No, we didn't.
You had a single culture. By that, you got a single culture, but still you're dealing with the rest of the organization. I wonder whether that actually still exists in terms of there is a differentiation between who came from where.
No, I think the company, it's one of the core strengths of the company, I think, as a whole. We've done a lot of acquisitions in the past, but we've also managed to really integrate those businesses and make sure that we have one unified culture. And that's also the reason why I joined the company. Because even before I joined AB InBev, I had working in consulting, I had the opportunity to benchmark various companies to compare, what are the operational models, how did the organizations look in terms of the structure, the roles and responsibilities that people have, the role of center, and the culture that goes with it. And AB InBev was always coming up as one of the strongest, where what the management is saying about the culture is really executed in the day to day, and it's ingrained also into the evaluation cycle on the people side. So I think communication and also enforcing that in the review cycles with the individual team members, trying to identify where are places where the employee has strengths in terms of the cultural alignment, where are the areas that they need to further develop. I think this really puts into perspective and helps the team have a clear action plan on how to better align with the culture.
If someone called you up and said, "Hey, Kohei, I'm beginning this big job in Japan. I'm going to run the organization there, but I don't know about Japan, leading there. You'd be leading there. What advice would you give me? What advice would you give them to be an effective leader in Japan?"
Yeah. One thing is making sure that the senior management understand the Japan market, right? I think you hear a lot about companies where that takes time. But having that, I think, as early as possible, having them in the market, talking to some customers, seeing the market firsthand, really puts into perspective where Japan is different and where it's not different, because it's also not that Japan is different in all the aspects.
It's a good point. I wrote a book called Japan Business Mastery because I realized a few years ago that no one had written any books on doing business in Japan for a long, long time. So what if the boil in Japan had everyone rushed off to China? And no one was writing about that anymore. And my last chapter 34, I think it is basically saying exactly that. Go and talk to your bosses and get them to give you time for Japan. And if they don't accept what you need, don't take the job. Because, getting the sort of, right, Kohei, you're going to Japan, we expect results, we expect turnaround, we expect numbers straight away, we want to see this charts change up to the right, go, 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 or else, and then you get here. Japan doesn't operate like that, So instantly you're in the meat grinder between the headquarters' basically unrealistic expectations and the Japanese reality of how things work here. But I like your point, particularly about talking to customers, because there's always a tremendous reality dosage there in talking to customers, because often you find things are different in Japan. You don't understand why they're different till you talk to the customers. You realize, oh, that's why we do that. Yeah, please go on. What else?
I think balance of patience and impatience, I think, is also important. Creating change, creating belief, creating pull for the market. I think these are things that can take time in Japan. As you said, building trust takes a while as well, internally as well as externally. So you need to have some patience there. But I think, if you just accept the way that business is done, the speed that businesses move in Japan, that's also not creating the change that most companies want. So making sure to still have that, impatience. As a leader, we need to be impatient. We need to, have ambitions to change certain things to drive results. So trying to have that balance, I think, is very important. Another thing I think, that's unique to Japan is the amount of detailed planning, longer term outlook and directions that team members and employees require. In other markets that I worked in, once you say, let's do this, people are quite happy to take that risk or challenge, even if it's a change in direction. I think in Japan, people want to know more before they start to move. But once you can clarify that direction and the detail that the team needs, that's when things really start to move in Japan at the quality and at the speed that you don't see in other markets. So I think that's an important aspect to know.
On that point, I think the risk aversion here is so strong that when you have an innovation or some new approach, people really go through all the downside potential of that change in detail. And so often when you float the idea, you just get hit with this wall of negativity, which if you don't understand what they're doing, they're trying to save you from yourself potentially, save the company from making big mistakes potentially by thinking through the ramifications of this in depth. But at first you get hit with that negativity. What's wrong with these people? Why are they against my idea? But that we've got to understand, it might not be against your idea, but they just want to make sure that any things that we haven't anticipated are anticipated, or anything that could possibly go wrong is counted in early and counted so it doesn't go wrong. So it's not negativity, it's probably caution, I think.
Yes.
We should do due diligence. We all do due diligence. I think Japan just does due diligence at an incredibly high level compared to a lot of other cultures.
Yes. But if you were to do that for every decision you make and every risk you take, it's also, going to slow the business down, as I mentioned before. So I think it's important to also train the organization and the team to build resilience, to have the right mindset, to balance, calculated risk taking with the caution that you mentioned as well.
And any other points you'd advise them? What about, should they learn Japanese language?
I think, it can go a long way. I think, being a Japanese, it's maybe doesn't help coming from me, but, I've seen other leaders in the past who, if they learn a little bit of Japanese, it really helps with building a connection with the team members and even with customers as well. And it's a big thing to be a foreign leader in Japan. Actually, I think it can be, it can open doors potentially. People appreciate that someone from another country is coming to Japan and talk to them. So I think in those situations, it does help to know, a couple of words in Japanese.
Yeah. Well, did you learn any Chinese when you were in China?
I did.
You did? Good. Well done. Well done. You were in Shanghai?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Shanghaiese dialect is like Jesus, That's difficult. I learned Mandarin when I was at university, and when I was in Shanghai, I listened to the local dialect. I was like, is that Chinese? It's so Chinese. So different.
Yeah.
And what about your definition of leadership? How would you define leadership?
Leadership in the end, I think, is being able to lead a group of people, a team, to deliver results. And I think, great leadership is about being able to build a strong team with the ability to execute with resilience so that you can deliver the results consistently over time.
And have you come up with any sort of habits, for yourself, personal habits that have served you well as a leader? You sort of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, have a nice bath or something like that, or doing yoga for 4 hours before work or something. Anything that you've found works well for you personally?
Yeah, I think having a routine definitely helps. So for me, exercise is very important. So I force myself to go to the gym. I have kind of a semi-personal training, which forces me to make the booking for the next training session, and I have 8 slots per month, which really makes sure that even during busy times, I at least make time for exercise. I have to walk. I have a dog, so I walk my dog every morning, and also try to meditate. I think which helps me as well to center myself.
Mm. And what about, businesses up and down? And I mean, your entire industry is looking down the barrel of young people not drinking as much. You see these reports that the actual number is dropping quite fast, actually, quite shockingly fast. But we always have, Lehman shocks or, earthquakes, tsunami, nuclear triple meltdown. We have pandemics, all sorts of things which make business difficult. What have you found to help with your resilience that works well to be resilient in the face of tough times? Because I figure in your industry, tough times are coming in terms of the demographic trend. So what works well in terms of resilience?
I mean, for the beer industry in Japan, it's declining 4% year on year. So it's shrinking, but there are pockets of growth. And for us, we're playing in the premium beer segment, which is growing. So in that sense, yes, there are tough times as well, but we see a lot of opportunities as well, which gives us the reason to believe. But aside from that, I think resilience at the leadership level is, as I mentioned, having the right routines, having the right mindset to deal with it at the leadership level. I think for the team, it's important to build it over time, right? It's not going to happen overnight. And so each of these challenges that we go through as a company, I think making sure that people understand why we're making certain choices, keeping the team informed, but getting the team used to taking risks where needed, and then seeing the fruits and success and results of that afterwards, I think builds resilience in an organization.
Sounds very good. Well, Kohei, good luck with the demographic trends for the beer industry, but I'm sure you'll find a way through it. I think you're right, the flight to quality is definitely a factor on that too. So you mightn't drink as much, but you drink better. I'm certainly trying to apply that. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.